got here earlier than I thought. The buses just came. I was here earlier than I really wanted to be. So I went down to Uncle Bobby's.
Uncle Bobby's, that's the spot.
Yeah.
All right, I got you in. We're all covered. We're all set for today's broadcast. 10 minutes. 10 minutes. So I will pass that in. And I also send you this company's number. And they're going to be expensive. Don't worry about the money. But just have your buddy communicate with them and then see if they can set something up. Because he maybe could get one of his employees to just say, hey,
Oh, yeah.
you know what I mean? Because
Right.
he doesn't need a whole company right now.
No.
He just really
No.
needs one of his employees.
Right. Well, see, here's what happened. I'll tell you real quick. There's a brother that's one of the baddest Cuban drummers that I have heard in quite a while. And I found out how bad, why he's so bad, because he's going to Cuba sometimes studying under master. And this brother is well, anyway, the brother wants me to lecture on the spiritual significance of rhythm in the serious black music. So I said, well, can we get this brother? So we spoke to him, and he's got that date. It's going to be in Black History Month. I think it's the 24th of February. We're going to do this on a Saturday.
Make sure we get that.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome.
So,
Yeah, all right, good. Yeah, that's all you need.
Yeah.
I'll send you, like I said, I'm gonna send you this company, but that's just so that your buddy can talk to him. He'll guide him on like, hey, these are the steps, right?
okay.
But we'll get one individual, so like an employee to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? Maybe they can do it for 100 or so. Come out, just shoot it.
Thank you.
And then you at least have that.
That sounds great, man. Thank you.
Now, Kareem,
Yes, sir.
what we doing with the TV?
Real good.
So
That's good.
the solution is,
Mm-hmm.
I looked at like, because we already had people that so I wanted to do,
How are you today,
I
Dr.
want to just get a more expensive capture card. Right now we got one that's $45. I want to get like a $200 capture card, but you do one on that side, one on that side, $400.
You look like you're from the nation.
That's what they always tell me.
With the bow
With the bow
tie.
tie, yeah.
And then we got
That's what does it.
that cable, remember that cable that's running through there? That's the real solution, but we got to run a cable, I gotta get a converter, it's like, man, so much work just to get this thing to do. But that's the real solution. And that's more expensive for us, so.
Let's get the budget so we know we get what we need.
Yeah.
Then you know what I mean? Then we gonna do what we want to do. Right?
I think one of them is the answer. I just need to talk to them. I'm gonna spend, you know me, I want to get it.
We gonna do what we gonna do, but we make it happen.
Oh, no, I'm good with it. I'm good with it. I'm just big monetized. I feel so good about that.
About time. That's what we've been talking
His son
about.
said,
We've been talking about it. They didn't understand what we were talking about.
man, he said something about this. That patch. Now, he got some. We always listen to the queen. Whatever the queen wants, she get. That's how we work around here.
Hey.
Five, four, three,
You ready?
2.
Hotep, Hotep, Hotep. Welcome once again to the Molefe Kete Asante Institute, Germantown Avenue, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States of America, out to the world, bringing information and inspiration to help change our situation in pursuit of African liberation. Today, we have a special presentation. I didn't even intend for that last part to rhyme. Tugu Sanusi, a stellar scholar at Temple University, will be joined by Niemat Ahmadi, founder and president, Darfur Women's Action Group. I'm going to bring on Dr. Molefe Kete Asante to give you some more context. And stay tuned and stay focused. Our next event will be Miss Christina Hudson, a PhD student, in conjunction with Miss Hope Dove, another PhD student at Temple University, discussing liberating our minds. I had an interesting conversation in the class where there was a conversation about the Middle East. And they were like, what should the president's role be? And what should leaders' role be? And, these conflicts. And I thought to myself, Dr. Asante said to me that you need to make sure you speak the truth in service of your people in every audience. So even though I wasn't in the audience of Afrocentrics or Pan-Africanists, I raised my hand. I said, I think that we need some context and some perspective to be interjected. And I just read to them something that was on Google that discussed 9,000 deaths in the Sudanese conflict and the amount of people that have been displaced. I just wanted to say that because they were having this conversation as though there was only certain people suffering that mattered, in terms of, and I said, the president hasn't said anything about the Sudan. Right? And I said, you can imagine how people in my department must feel in terms of who counts, and the whole class got silent. And I said, I did a good job, because I remember Dr. Asante doing that often. So I said, I'm on the right path when everybody's silent. And some of the students came up to me after. They said, I had no idea. These are master students. Some of them have multiple degrees. They had no idea that there was even a conflict that exists. And I said, the level of disregard for African life and African liberation and African suffering, that is why we're having this conversation today. So without further ado, put your hands together, show your love for the founder, Dr. Molefe Kete Asante.
Thank you very much. This is the rapping professor. I always say the most popular professor at Temple University, dynamic and outstanding intellectual. And by the way, he didn't tell you, Dr. Jabali Ade did not tell you that his new book on Afrocentricity and Afrofuturism has just been released. I saw it on Amazon. It's going to be powerful. University of Mississippi Press. If you get a chance, look it up and see that incredible book and incredible work by this outstanding scholar. Now, we know that, one of the beautiful things about the MKA Institute is that people come in and they come on in and they sit here and they study and they learn. And we're very, very happy to have them come. Today, we have a very special day. Today, we have Sister Niemat Ahmadi. She is an outstanding person in our community internationally. She's a native of North Darfur in Sudan and is the founder and president of the Darfur Women Action Group and the founder and CEO of Unique 22 LLC Strategist. She's a veteran human rights and genocide prevention advocate and a seasoned strategic planning and management professional, and is currently a member of the International Strategic Planning Association and the Excellence in Government team member. We are just delighted to have Ms. Ahmadi. She has a long track record working with international non-governmental organizations for over 23 years in various fields of emergency, development, and policy advocacy in Sudan and internationally. Ms. Ahmadi previously worked as the Director of Global Partnerships for the United to End Genocide and the Save Darfur Coalition in the U.S. and with Oxfam, Great Britain, Intermediate Technology Development Group, now known as Practical Action, and the United Nations World Food Program in Sudan. She also served as a gender advisor at the 7th round of inter-Sudanese peace talks on Darfur in Abuja, Nigeria. This is a big time person that we're talking about. And it's so wonderful that Dr. Ade mentioned about the thousands of people who've been killed in Sudan. You would think that the only conflict going on in the world is in Southwest Asia. But we know that there are other conflicts as well, and we know that Sudan has been out there. Having traveled extensively and addressed international conferences worldwide, Ms. Ahmadi has provided expert testimonies at prestigious policy forums, including the United Nations Security Council, United Nations Human Rights Council, Assembly of the States parties to the International Criminal Court, Senate Foreign Relations Committee, and the International Criminal Court, amplifying the voices of women and Darfur survivors on the global stage. In 2008, Ms. Ahmadi was recognized by President George Bush as one of the 8 global human rights fighters of the entire year. She received various fellowships, including to Columbia University, their Ford Motor Company International Fellowship, an initiative for inclusive securities, women's peace, and security fellowship at American University. Ms. Ahmadi earned her Master of Science in Sustainable Development and Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from Oxford University for Women in Sudan. You know what? I always love to read about the greatness of our people. You should always, when someone gives you and talk to you about people, we should let people know who we have here at the MKA Institute. We have, we have had the most outstanding people in the African world. They come through here and they speak here and they go on to other things. So we're very excited to have Sister Ahmadi here. And I just want to say that she will be accompanied after she speaks for about 10 minutes by Tugu Sanusi, who is a doctoral student here at Temple University and one of the outstanding defenders of Sudan. So and the Kush civilization and the Darfur civilization. So at this time, with no further announcements or anything, we're going to ask if Sister Niemat Ahmadi will come forward.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes. Great. I am very delighted and humbled to be with you here this evening. I have been for years following Dr. Malafe's work, and I have so much inspired by, and I'm very proud to be here today with you to share with you our tragic situation in Sudan, but also to learn and be in this institute that represent the most significant work that is done in our history and our lives. And I'm very honored to be with you this evening. And thank you, Dr. Malafi. Thank you, Al Sanusi. Thank you, brother here. And thank you, Professor, for that great introduction. Well, before I speak to you, I'm going to speak to you about the situation in Sudan and Darfur in particular. But before that, usually before my speaking, I wanted to bring the voices of the people that they're unable to be with us here, who have the voice, but their voice have been oppressed. And this is a commitment that I made for our people who live inside Sudan, in the camps, in the neighboring countries or refugee camps, that we're not only going to be speaking for them, but also to give them a voice through our platforms and our other platform that may be afforded for us. And so without further ado, I will share with you this video. And I know the video is really harsh, but it also sometimes we are told not to tell the truth about how difficult it is. So just bear with me and forgive me, but you just have to know that this is your brothers and sisters in Sudan going through this, but it has been in silence without many people know about it.
You may have heard about the conflict in Darfur, Sudan. What's really happening there? And what can you do to help save the people of Darfur?
It hardly seems possible, but the genocide in Darfur continues. The government in Sudan is responsible for this 4-year campaign of violence.
A catastrophe is still unfolding on a massive scale, the Darfur region in Sudan.
Aid workers call Darfur the worst humanitarian crisis in the world today.
Over 4,000 villages were being burned down, erased totally from the earth.
Our own government trying to kill us all.
5 different men raped me.
They just slaughtering them and that's it.
Sudan is the largest country in Africa, and Darfur, an area about the size of Texas, lies in the western region of the country. In 2003, after decades of neglect, drought, and oppression, 2 rebel groups that represent agrarian farmers mounted a challenge to Sudan's president, Omar al-Bashir. President Bashir's response was brutal. Under his direction, the government of Sudan began carrying out devastating assaults on the civilian population. To assist in their campaign to wipe out the people of Darfur, the Sudanese government armed and trained a militia known as the Janjaweed. Working together, the Sudanese government and the Janjaweed coordinate the bombing of innocent civilian villages from the air using military planes and helicopter gunships. Then, the Janjaweed and the Sudanese government's military forces move in on the ground, raping the girls and women in front of their families, killing the men, poisoning the wells, and burning the villages. Villages of up to 20,000 people have been burned to the ground. The current death toll is up to an estimated 400,000 people.
My name is Daoud Harry. I'm from Darfur, Sudan. I was able to escape, but my brothers and 100 other people was killed. While I was a refugee in Chad, I want to do something to help in my people. I became a translator for international journalists. I risked my life for this work. I believe if the people know what is happening, they will help to stop a genocide. I'm just only one, 100,000 people who were suffering since 2003. Here are some others. These are a story of really people, voices from Darfur.
اسمي محمد ضفع الله إسحاق. I was farmer in Darfur. The government with the Janjaweed, with the horses, after that they came and attacked our village. They took everything from us. They beat me and they leave me for dead. And they kill everybody in the village if you are not running. If your children, elder, women, men, everybody, when they found it, just they kill us. My brother was best friend, like father to me. They shot 5 bullets in his back. If I have chance to say something for my brother, I'm praying all days for you.
That's it. That's the border. We've just crossed from Chad heading into Sudan and into Darfur. We asked the Sudanese government for permission to come into Darfur, but we didn't get it. No surprise. You can look at it this way. Back in 1944, the Germans didn't want anybody coming in and seeing their death camps, and today in Sudan, the government doesn't want anybody coming in and seeing what amount to death villages.
This is a picture of Hengala before the attack. This is what the government didn't want us to see.
There are houses all around us, as far as the eye can see, and they're all destroyed, every single one of them. Why burn each and every house down?
Yeah, it's a message, you know, it's a message to non-Arab people in Darfur. We do not want you in Darfur.
A message delivered by Sudanese troops and militia called the Janjaweed.
The Janjaweed will divide themselves, some for rape, some to set fire, some to shoot, and some to follow those survivors who were able to run away. They may hide behind trees, behind bushes. Those bushes will be set on fire.
When we talk about more than 4 million people who have been forcibly displaced from their homes, ethnic cleansing have been completely established.
What is happening is complete extermination of the indigenous African in Sudan.
During these attacks, rapes happened.
Multiple rapes to the same woman. Some of them died out of rape.
Actually, rape is used as a weapon of war in Darfur.
Five different men, they attacked me, they raped me, and they cut me in different parts of my body with a knife, and they burned cigarettes in my body. The rape is very, very difficult, something for me. The militia attacked a school of girls in North Darfur. They raped 40 girls with their teachers. They were bleeding. I saw them, they were tortured. Why they raped them? They are children, they were children, just children.
When the attacks come, the women may not be able to take all their children and run away. So those who survived only took few of their children. Some just died there, right there. The remaining children, when they end up in a camp, still they were dying from malnutrition disease, from different kind of disease, a lack of medication. It is really devastating.
In a country governed by the rule of the gun, Saleh Osman believes in the rule of law. He's a human rights lawyer working in Sudan. As violence in Darfur increased, Mr. Osman worked to provide a record of the alleged war crimes.
When the situation became worse in Darfur, I was very much engaged in that issue of protecting the rights of the people.
He is a thorn in the side of those who use violence to cling to power. And so for many of his fellow Darfurians, Mr. Osman is a lifeline to hope.
Hoping that maybe, if not tomorrow, one day, one time in the future, criminals should be held liable for their acts.
His fight against injustice in Sudan has had a personal cost.
Several members of my own family have been killed, and the rest are right now living in the camps. Myself, also, I have been targeted because of my work as a human rights lawyer. And I was threatened also that I would be killed.
He was taken and tortured by the Sudanese government and held for 7 months in 2004. After his own hunger strike and an international letter-writing campaign by human rights organizations, he was released.
When I came out, I found more than 5,000 letters around the world supporting me and encouraging me. That was amazing.
His story is an example of how effective international pressure can be on repressive governments.
With all the effort that had made, still some people have no idea about what's going on in Darfur.
More than 2 million innocent civilians have been forced to flee their homes and now live in displaced persons camps in Sudan or in refugee camps in neighboring Chad. When their village was attacked, these women walked for 3 days across the desert with their children to escape. Like many refugees, they try to find some shelter under the shade of a tree. After 4 years, why is the killing, rape, and torture still going on? Because world leaders have been ineffective at mobilizing real pressure on the Sudanese government. The Bush administration, the United Nations, and others have had strong words, but have done little to stop the killing in Darfur. President al-Bashir's strategy to deny, delay, and defy international peacekeeping efforts has worked. And major countries like China have protected the Sudanese government in the UN Security Council because they have oil interests in Sudan. That's why we need your voice more than ever to pressure governments around the world to end the suffering.
6 o'clock in the morning, I went to forest to find firewood. When I come back, my share I find with my mother. And my wife, she was 7 months pregnant. She died in that day. And my sister, Toma, and my father, they are separate. I don't know where they are still now. I don't know where they are. They hang me, my head down. They're beating me. They ask me, they're beating me. They say, you have to tell us. If you don't tell us, we will kill you. I say, I don't know nothing. And one of the soldiers, he kicked me, see? There were too many people. And, we can't bury them separately. Sometimes we can bury 5 or 6 or 10 together. If nothing is done, there will be no one left.
A world away from Darfur, one survivor found a new home in Philadelphia.
My name is Shakir. I am from Sudan, Darfur. I came to United States. I came in 2004. I was in this house, and this family, a very nice family, they teach me so much. I just ask God, just to bless them with a long life, and help them, as they help me. I love them so much.
He is haunted by what happened.
The Sudanese government came to our house and they took my father, and they tortured him in a very different ways. They just dig a hole and put my father in it. He was alive.
Anwar Bakr. Bakr is my father. Aisha is my mother, and have brothers. They burn my people alive. Even I couldn't recognize my neighbor, my cousins, my friends, my relatives. They were sent by the government to kill my people. Even I couldn't imagine.
It is the time for the world to act, not to ask questions. What is happening there? It is known to everybody that atrocities are happening on a daily basis.
As long as there are people who are alive still, and their rights are taken away, we can still reach them.
We have the responsibility to pursue justice.
Decision makers have to take action, serious and quick and real effective action to stop the genocide. The international forces with a strong mandate will be the only way that they can be there, witness and stop what is happening.
Well, as you can see, this video is from 2007, and I have never thought that a genocide will be allowed to continue for more than 20 years. This video was created 4 years after the beginning of the Darfur genocide. Unfortunately, it has been allowed to continue for more than 2 decades. And today, the type of genocide that the people of Darfur are facing is very different than 20 years ago, even worse. As you may have heard, on April 15th of 2023, 2 generals started a war for power struggle in the capital Khartoum. The conflict quickly spread across the Sudan, but unfortunately, the most who have been impacted by the current crisis is the people of Darfur, people who have already been displaced by the long-standing genocide in Darfur. The Rapid Support Forces, these were militia of Janjaweed. As you can see, there was a reference to Janjaweed militia.
I hope you will join.
The Janjaweed, these are Arabs militias from Arab origin, were recruited by the central government, who also believe they are Arabs, and they specifically were brainwashed, equipped, and supported, trained to go and torch the villages of the indigenous African people to remove them from their land. So they think that they do not deserve this land. And they're doing this because of the history, of Darfur, as Darfur was an independent state before Sudan created as a political entity. And the Darfur kingdom was ruled by the is the indigenous African tribe that is currently targeted by the current genocide the most for more than 7 centuries before Darfur was attacked by the British colonial and killed the king and annexed Darfur to Sudan by force, and that is when our crisis and our marginalization and our plight has started. I'm not going to go into that history, but I wanted to just to give some context. So in Khartoum, the army and the militia, they were together. These are the people who attacked the people of Darfur long ago. And at some point, there was a power struggle between them, and they started the fight. The Rapid Support Forces was going house after house, kicking people out of their homes, loot properties, and rape women systematically, while the government is bombarding, but they use airstrike shelling, bombing services, electric, water, bridges, and civilians' home. So in Khartoum, that housed more than 9 million people were trapped in their home. Most of them are dying from hunger and starvation. Out of the 9.8 million people, only about 1 million who are able to flee. The rest remain trapped because they could not afford. From that day, the production of every sort stopped. There's no jobs, there is no salaries, there is no any kind of incoming good from any direction. So imagine for 6 months people have to endure that while falling victim to this senseless fight. Unfortunately, this in Khartoum is somehow clear that there is some sort of fight between the militia and the army. In Darfur, it's very different. The militias, the Arab militias, are targeting the indigenous African people in their homes. They are coming, when they come to a city, they precisely do certain things. First, they isolate the city from all means of communication. They cut the phone lines and they cut the internet service. Then they go to the market, they loot it and they burn the market. They go to the big storage, food storage, like the WFP or World Food Program warehouses and other food storage. They loot it and they burn the remaining. Then they go to civilians' home. They loot the most valuable. They kill, but based on ethnicity, and rape women. And they tell them, you must be happy that now you are going to have an Arab child. We are going to liberate this land from the Abid, which is the word for a slave in the Arabic word of a slave. This statement was clearly and visible in a city called Al Junaina in western part of Darfur in the border of Chad, where the predominantly Masalit from the indigenous African tribe, one of the most targeted tribes by the Darfur genocide. They killed these people. They recorded videos. Some of their relatives were living here in the United States for them to watch online and showing that now this land is being liberated. In one day, they forced about 50,000 people from the Masalit were escorted to across the border to Chad. These were mostly women and children. They separated boys from 12 upward to 17 and 18, and they executed them. About 300 youth were killed in one day. When the governor spoke to the media, the governor also from Masalit, they went into his place, they took him, killed him, and they degraded his body around for over a month. They refused to his relative to bury him. This did not just happen in Al Junaina, but systematically into other cities, the city of Zalingi, Wadi Saleh, Kabkabia, my hometown. I could not speak to my mom and my sisters for about 5 months. Finally, there was a telecommunication company that was installed, and still they cut the communication whenever they want to commit incidents. Right now, Darfur is completely falling under the Rapid Support Force. And who are the Rapid Support Forces? These are the militias of Janjaweed from Arab tribes who were recruited back then in 2002, 2003 to exterminate the people of Darfur, but they were integrated into the government army. The Janjaweed back in 2003, they were in horses and camel backs, but now they have grown more sophisticated. They have regional relations with the Middle Eastern Gulf states in particular. Why they are doing this? They are supporting them with weapon, ammunition, and money because they want to build an Arab Islamic belt extended from Sudan through the Sahel to Chad, Central African Republic, Mali, and Niger, up to Mauritania and Senegal. So they do believe that this area is rich, but they think the indigenous African, these black people, they do not deserve it. And because of that, they are supplied by weapon, money, training from the Middle Eastern. So as of today, between April and May, all the internationals have fled the Sudan because of what's insecurity. All the international humanitarian aid organizations have fled the Sudan. Until today, until this morning we are coming here, there is a bombing and shooting in Darfur, and this is all happening within the watch of the international community. It is so devastating. Last month, President Biden walked into the UN General Assembly meeting. He could not mention Sudan. Sudan currently having about over 48 million people. 2/3 of those people are currently under siege with no or limited means of survival, while they are facing killing. So the people of Darfur currently are left to die. They have only two options, either to die by bullet or by starvation, hunger, lack of access to medicine, or any other means of sustenance. So because of that, for the last 4 months, we have been working day and night, documenting atrocities, trying to connect our people on the ground to make sure that we get the word out, going meeting with policymakers, traveling across the world. I was just in Brussels speaking to the members of the European Union. We were also in The Hague as the case of Darfur was referred to the International Criminal Court, whereby several members of the former regime of al-Bashir have been indicted for genocide, war crimes, and crimes against humanity, including the former president of al-Bashir. And unfortunately, until today, the African people's plight doesn't make headline. The media follow politics and follow the money. Those with money and politics do not speak to African issues. And that is why I think coming here, speaking to you, by speaking to you, is to have you understand what is the current dangerous situation that your sisters and brothers in Darfur and in Sudan going through, and what you can do to help. I think currently that Sudan is the most dangerous place and the worst humanitarian crisis of our lifetime, because the country is completely isolated. There is 600,000 people who fled as refugees. 300,000 are in Chad alone, in addition to the existing 300,000 who continue to live there for the last 20 years. 200,000 crossed to Egypt, Uganda, South Sudan, Kenya, you can name it, Ethiopia. And even in this refugee setting, they are facing with lack of humanitarian assistance because countries could not pledge the fund, as you see, for Ukraine. And we are happy to see that international community actively aiding the people of Ukraine, which is they do deserve, but that the same help and aid doesn't happen when things happen in Africa. And that is why we are mobilizing. My organization, Darfur Women Action Group, we have been organizing around the clock, briefing policymakers, mobilizing the human rights community, mobilizing our diaspora community to speak up and hold our leaders accountable, because in the face of genocide, genocide is a very bipartisan issue. It's not only happens in Africa, but it can happen in your backyard here. It can happen in the United States, as nobody was seeing the crisis in Ukraine coming, but it happened in the next door to Europe. And that was very shocking and surprising. But I said, no wonder if you allow immunity for genocide for al-Bashir, so that will send a wrong signal to Putin that if genocide is allowed and a head of a state was given immunity, then another head of a state will dare to commit that, because they consider themselves, as long as they have the power, they can maintain that immunity. And we want to change that. And we can only change that by empowering those who are impacted to speak for themselves. And this is something that grounded in our founding, the Darfur Women Action Group. Why we founded Darfur Women Action Group and why we are doing what we do. I myself survived the Darfur genocide. And because of my voice, I was forced to flee. I fled Sudan in the midst of the night. I didn't know where to go, because this is the only place that I have known. I was well educated by my family in the best university that in the country. And I was happy that I was there to provide some help to my community, because it was my time to pay back. And I was very happy. Unfortunately, in an overnight, when the Darfur genocide started, we started documenting and speaking up against it. I was targeted along with many others, as you can see in the video, that prominent human rights lawyer, people like him and myself, were targeted for killing. So I had to flee. But one promise I made to our people, that wherever I go, I will be their voice. And that is why I came to the US in 2007. I joined the Save Darfur movement and continued to work there. But I knew that we are going to be in it for a long haul, and that we must lead by example, and we have a voice. We should not wait for other people to speak for us. And that's why, because of the promise I made and because of the commitment, we created the Darfur Women Action Group so that we can speak to our people. I've been traveling across the world telling people our stories and the stories of others, because in many cases you don't hear a lot of media focus. But now, thanks got to social media. We do in-house media, and also we come to platforms like Dr. Malafis so that we can make our voice heard. One thing I wanted, and I'm so happy and delighted to be a part of this institute, is that we have tried so hard to approach and trying to recruit our fellow African Americans because our plight is one. People sometimes try to divide us for political reason, maybe for even economic and social reason. We are the same people that brought our ancestors to this country as a slave. These are the same people who colonized Africa, and since then we never get to live in peace. But it is not the time for us to sit by and blame it in the colonialism or the slavery. We have to stand up, and we have to do it for ourselves. And if we stand up and do it for ourselves, there are allies, other people who will stand up with us. But we have to lead. It is not enough for us to complain. It is not enough for us to sit by and feel frustrated and discouraged. We do not have an option. As I tell my fellow Darfuri and Sudanese every day, that we do not have an option to get discouraged, because we have to fight. Rights are not being given. You have to take it if it is your right, and you have to fight for it. And because of that, we are doing what we do. And because of that, by telling you this and sharing, it's not about me anymore. It is about people like my mom, who is over 80 years old and currently trapped under the Stone Age slavery of the Rapid Support Force. They control my hometown. They're taking all the valuable from the people and keeping people from fleeing right now. And that is why we need your voice, and we want to constantly come to this platform to educate our people, because I know the cause of South Africa was very well known when our people, the African American community and civil rights leaders and activists organized here. They were able to exercise pressure over even the US government and change policy. And because of that, the pressure from here and from there, that helped put more pressure over those who are committing or perpetrating apartheid in South Africa. And even though the situation in the Sudan today might seem gloomy and depressing, but I do believe in hope, and we see the hope. We must keep that hope alive by continue to do what we do and seek allies like Dr. Malafi, the professor here, Brother Sanusi, and all of you to seek to speak for those who have a voice, but their voice have been oppressed. And thank you for listening to me.
Wow, that's a lot. Thank you, Sister Niemat, for your very informative information, and thank you, Dr. Asante, for your kind words. And we saw just the video, which is it's very sad. And sometimes somebody may ask someone, so what is behind this, right? So what are the underlying causes that has led to this kind of issue? And then I sometimes begin with the name. And I like Dr. Asante when Niemat, you just told the name where it comes from. And the same thing, I start a presentation by the name Sudan. So the word Sudan is an Arabic word. And Sudan it defined as Arab country. And I would say Sudan is not Arab country. Sudan is an African country. The word Sudan, as I said, it means black. And if it means black, and then it shouldn't be defined as an Arab country. You see the irony. They describe me as a black. But again, they say me, I'm an Arab. I'm not African. So this connection between logic, there's no any logic. If it's black country, then it should reflect a black people. Right. So what was the name that was existing before the word Sudan came to being, or before the country named Sudan? And that's, we know the word came when the Arab came to Africa, and that is a 7th century AD. So the name was existing was Kush, or it's Nubia. These are Afrocentric name. and name that reflect the people and the culture and the history of the people. But the word Sudan doesn't represent African people. It's a foreign word. It's this connection between us and people that are living. At Temple University, it's a kind of our cultural practice that whenever we are seeking something, we have to go to the source and the origin. And I would say that more specifically, it is a norm of Asantino school of thought. We have been trained to trace the source and origin of any phenomena, mainly where and when the phenomena became into being. Any phenomena. A kind of training, that's a structure that we have been trained and to find the source of any phenomena. And then I started looking up the word Arab, just the word, where it came from and what does it mean. And there's a new ways of knowing things. So, and then when I Googled that, or I looked up, and then I went to the source, and I found it says that, and I quote, it's Arab, or the word Arabic is a Semitic language. It's spoken primarily across the Arab world, having emerged in the 1st century AD, and it named after the Arab people. The term Arab was initially used to describe those living in Arabian Peninsula. And then I said, wait a minute, just in one thing. When it said that the term came to being in the 1st century AD, I said this is very young. 7th century AD, and I know that in our history, and these are facts. When I said young, this is the very compared to the Kemet and Kush or Nubia. This is because the last pyramid that was built in 2700 BC. And here the term came to being in 1st century AD. So just reading this, find one phenomenon or the fact that says is in the 1st century AD, and the other one, the last pyramid was built in 2700 BC. Then you say that, then how come then I was in existence as an African or Kush or Nubia? But the new terminology or new description being applied on me, which is describe me as Arab people. So that's kind of training that we've been trained, and we have to find that. Right. So then, here then it comes the role of Saudi Arabia. I just want to jump to the key points. And it says that when I was looking at Saudi Arabia and taking the lead and taking the front seat on the issue of Sudan, I asked myself, what makes Saudi Arabia to strongly cling or to strongly, take that position or take the issue of Sudan in their hand? And here it comes. Here it comes then, a Sudanese warring party. This was yesterday's statement, or 2 days ago. Sudanese warring parties have resumed negotiations in Saudi Arabia, aimed at ending the war that has killed more than 9,000 people and displaced some 5.6 million people. And this was a quote. Then I asked myself some Afrocentric questions based on just a statement and the role somebody is taking into that issue. I asked them, I said, what is the key motive that drives Saudi Arabia and the Arab world to get heavily involved in the issue of Sudan? It's very, very clear. If somebody doing something and you have to ask, see, what drives that person doing that or taking that position or that seat? We might not get the answer, but we have ability to ask the right question. And that's what Dr. Nahusi always tells us in the class. You might not get answer today or tomorrow, but we have ability based on the theory of Afrocentricity to ask the right question in the right place. Right. So then I also ask myself, what are the special attractions that make them to see in Sudan? What do they say that they claim Sudan to be in their hand? Is it a culture? Is it a religion? What kind of attraction that they see? What makes them feel that we should take a lead in the mediation? And then again, I ask myself, why AU is taking or given a back seat in the issue of Sudan? Is it by choice or intentional? This is an African issue. There is no any logic that says that should be resolved or taken into Saudi Arabia unless there is underlying factors, and we're coming to that point. Why do they feel we don't have any connection? Let's talk historically, culturally. But down the line, there was an invasion that happened, and the process that happened redesigned people in a different image or in different way of doing things, which have been taken out of our context and become culturally look like them. I know how that's why they claim that there's a cultural connection, but that cultural redesignation is a matter of invasion, is intentional. It's not something that's done overnight. And then now they're claiming to be the main or key players in that issue. Then if I said myself, if it is an issue of the culture of religion, and we call it in Afrocentricity, it's spirituality and ethics. That's the African way of doing things. Or that's how Afrocentricity look at the some terminology in terms of the religion. If it is a language, we had languages that we used to communicate before 1st century AD, that when the term Arab came into being. We have our own way of worship, own of whatever we do. But then I will say again, and then I brought the quote of Dr. Asante, all people create their religions out of their history. Their saint prophets and the wise people are those who have done admirable things within the context of their own experiences. We had our own experience, we have our own culture, we had our own religions before 7th century AD, when the first time Arabs stepped into the African soil. And these are facts. It's not something that we're bringing now, it's a facts, the reality. And that's how we got into now people say, then look at Sudan as an Arab country. And even Saudi Arabia is claiming to take that position and not giving any space to the other regional voices to come together and take that, and then it should be resolved or maybe taken the lead by African Union. And I will come to that point later on. Right. In terms, and then I also describe and I look at it and I say that what is Saudi Arabia is doing is a practice of cultural imperialism upon African people that they kept practicing since 7th century AD. In this regard, then Sheikh Anta Diop said what? He informs us that the imperialism first killed the being spiritually and culturally before trying to eliminate it physically. The negation of history and the intellectual accomplishment of Africans or black Africans was a cultural and mental murder which preceded and paved the way for their genocide here and there in the world. And that's the main issue that we have. The issue of Sudan is a cultural and identity issue, and many to that is invasion of Arab that invaded African soil since 7th century AD and is still claiming on that facts. So AU is what I read yesterday and what they explain in their source of information. What they did, they suspended the membership of Sudan in AU Union. But that's not enough. Suspension doesn't serve interests of the people. You have to have something concrete to say that Sudan is an African country and the problem is an African problem. If there's any logic, and this mediation or this lead should be taken by African people. We don't undermine the efforts of other nations who they need to help people to resolve issues. But at least the main people should take the lead. We should design the context in which the issue should be resolved. That's the main point that I'm making. I don't want to take more time because I'm just throwing some stuff on sister's lecture. Then I came up with with few points that I think we should do or what we should contribute into what is going on. And sister also laid out some few steps, but I also said, let me just throw these 5 and then I'm done. What I believe is that we should raise our unified voice and demand AU to take the lead in the issue of Sudan, and it should be resolved in Africa. Point 2, let us seek a proper channel through which we can actively get involved and make difference. Point 3, let us organize more sessions for information and discussion. Point 4, let us liaise and work with the people that support our cause. Number 5, we should advocate for Afrocentric Sudan that truly reflects the history and the culture of the people. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. Wow, this was powerful. I want to say just a couple of words, and then Dr. Ade will be doing the questions and answers, and we have some questions too. We got some questions everywhere. So let me just say this, because the presentations were so powerful, and in fact, tears in my eyes for the powerful presentations. I think, though, for the diaspora, for the Africans in the U.S., what has to be made clear is, I just saw somebody in the audience that said, wow, it's good to see you, one of our big supporters. What has to be made clear for the Africans in the U.S. is that it's a cultural issue. And the reason for that is because there's a confusion here in my mind that we were very clear about South Africa and Sister Ahmadi because they were white people, you see? And so we were able to organize against white racism and white domination in South Africa. When black people see the film, United States people, when we see the film that you showed earlier, it looks to us like there are black people killing black people. You see what I'm saying? And that's not the issue. The issue is a cultural issue. It's Arabs killing Africans. But the Arabs sometimes look like we do. You see what I'm saying? It's very good. When you show a picture of Bashir, African Americans say, "Oh, he's black." You see, and this happened to me so many times. When I've spoken to United Nations, this happened to me. When I spoke to Karen Bass, I think it was, who was representing the Congressional Black Caucus at one time. They said to me, well, the Arabs come to the Congress and they look just like we do. I said, no, this is a cultural problem here. See, it's not like the Arabs in Sudan. Many of the Arabs in Sudan don't identify as different to us. And that's a confusing issue. And I think it's a confusion issue, Brother Tugu, with the AU. So you say, I would love to see the African Union take a stand, but they're confused. I've had this conversation in South Africa. They say, well, but Sudan is an African country. There are black people in Sudan fighting, so, but they don't understand that the idea behind that cultural domination in Sudan is for the people who over the centuries have become darker in their complexion, but their idea is still Arab. And their intention is to take out all indigenous Africans. That's what you have to explain to the African Union. And that's the hardest part, because if we take the color thing and the phenotype thing, it becomes very confusing to Africans in South Africa or Africans in the United States. So I'm sure that we will clarify that. We need to clarify that it's a cultural contest going on. The Arabs in Sudan want to take over the African indigenous people's land. That's it, and it's clear. And then so you now, but it's hard to tell who is who. Just like it's hard to tell about Clarence Thomas. You know what I'm saying? So who's who? What is what? You know what I mean? So it's a cultural issue, and not a phenotypical issue necessarily, but a cultural issue. But anyway, that's just my little comment. Dr. Jabali, and the questions, any questions for the speakers and so on. And the speakers can come forward if they want to.
Okay, I'm very grateful to really be able to receive the accuracy of this information. And this is definitely information you cannot get over mainstream media because of the politics of information and all of that. Now, number one, worse than the taking of the land and enslaving our bodies, the absolute worst thing that have happened to us worldwide as black people is the successful colonization of God, where you got blue black people in Sudan that see themselves as Arabs, and they are being supported by and we've had many people that have come here and explained the details of this. They've been supported with all kinds of ridiculous money, all kinds of ridiculous armament, all kinds of training and what have you from the Arab world. So the question that always comes to me, and I'm very disturbed with the answer to that question, and that is the indigenous people who don't want to embrace Islam and don't want to be Arabs and don't see themselves as Arabs and want to keep their indigenous language. What is the military support for the indigenous people? And then in answering this, what does this really mean? And it's very disturbing to me, and I have found that the key to my sanity is a good sense of humor. And I found that real humor is a brain function. It enables you to be vividly aware of the details of all of the stuff that has happened and that is happening without losing your mind. So I'm asking that question. What, in the light of the fact that the support militarily and what have you for the indigenous people is not there. So what is the solution to this?
Well, thank you. I think that is a really important question. Number one, to answer your question, these Arabized black, they're fighting by proxy to these Gulf countries, these Arab nations. They think the black in Sudan do not deserve that land. Sudan is a very rich country. We have the best agricultural land. We have the longest river and the most pure drinking water that is good for agriculture, fishing, and everything in that Nile that comes from South Sudan, Uganda, and Ethiopia. We have minerals. We have all kind of resources that are virgin. Some of them have yet to be discovered. So they know that, and they think this black African don't deserve that. Unfortunately, these other Arabized black or a few Arab who were in Sudan, these are the people who ate the colonial. And they also left with the colonial mindset and colonial policy. And they were told specifically, the people of Darfur, do not ever let them come to power. This is the final recommendation of the British colonial when they were leaving. And then now we fall victim into the British colonialism, and then the Arab colonialism is the worst because it used someone who looked just like you to fight you, to create that confusion. So even African next door, they was like, you know what, it's just like African people killing one another, and they don't understand that. But these people have a huge plan. In terms of military support, I think you know, and you have seen in that video, Darfuri who have rose, pick up arms, and they want to fight for their freedom. They were dismantled, divided by these countries, like they were like fought against by so many nations to divide them across ethnic lines, to dismantle, to reduce their power, and then to support the regime in Khartoum so that whenever they go to peace negotiation, that the government wins and they divide them further and further. They use divide and conquer policy to divide even our people among themselves, and that is why. And when you speak here in the West, even though they know that it is a genocide, they do not want to resolve the issue sustainably, but also they do not want to support the people to fight for themselves. So that is the issue that we want to mobilize people about it. I think under international law, and that is why the United Nations is being created. Unfortunately, they are not doing what they are supposed to be doing, but under international law, we all know that the protection of the people is mandatory for every single government to protect the nation, to protect their people. When the government fail, it is the international community is obligated to protect those people. And that's why early on the case of Darfur was referred to the International Criminal Court. There was a deployment, but this Gulf nation would lobby the United States, would lobby the British government, the European, to tell them other stories so that they can turn a blind eye to the suffering of the Black African in Sudan, so that we can be weaker and weaker. We are displaced, we are sent as refugees, and our land is now being taken by the Arab Janjaweed and Rapid Support Forces.
If I can add just maybe a few maybe statements, what I understood about whether these indigenous people, they get a military support to defend themselves. Actually, the existing government is against these indigenous people. So the indigenous people that that are main target of the government, they organized themselves in 2002 and 3 when they took arms, and now they came that we have to defend ourselves and defend our existence. But they are victims of the government. So the government that existing at the moment is the one mobilizing militia and Arab people and the resources in the Gulf to get rid of indigenous people. So the indigenous people are victims, and they're very vulnerable. They can be lost at any time unless we support and we stand together as one. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, sister, and thank you, my brother, for the presentations. Quick question is, based on the follow-up on what you just shared about this divide and conquer, and to go back to there's this historical continuity that we see, whether we talk about going back to early enslavement from the Portuguese to Spanish on, or we talk about 1880-45 Berlin Conference, this idea of we're fighting against mammoths who are unified in cultural unity, right? Pan-Europeanism, Pan-Arabism, and then we have this non-Afrocentric view of African culture that's so siloed and so small that when it's time of crisis, it's hard to all of a sudden unify ad hoc. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So isn't there a problem of a deeper lack of Pan-Africanism, of cultural Pan-Africanism, of an Afrocentric mindset, so that people see themselves as one, so they can fight off these behemoths like a China or Pan-European or Russia, et cetera, or Pan-Arabia. You can't do that as individual states. So isn't that the cultural issue, to go back to Dr. Asante, how we see ourselves?
Well, I think you said it all. It is absolutely a cultural and the division that is created. You know, language is the container of all cultures. And you see in Africa, and I feel sad every time I go to these global women conferences where I have sisters from other countries, from the Congo, Rwanda, or the other DRC, the Congo, Brazzaville, that people speak French, Portuguese, English, Swahili. So you could barely communicate. And that is where our division and the defection is lying. Because of those colonialism, they made sure that we never come together, because If we don't speak one language, it is hard. Even in Sudan, we have our own languages. We have never been let or allowed to speak our languages and in schools, or even teach it to the new generations or write it. There is a lot of effort. It is like individual group effort. It's not formal effort in Sudan. Like there is no reason that we will all be forced to speak Arabic while we are not allowed to speak other language. So that is the problem. So what we need to is to create a pan-Africanism coalition, and also and speak about these issues. The more we speak, I think we need more lectures like this. We need more events and create more public platform whereby we can mobilize African across the world. I was just talking to friends from Ghana and Senegal, and I told them the story about the killing and the removal of African, and how the Arabs are saying that they are happy now they clear the land from the slave. And they said, we see the videos, but we don't understand. Can you translate those videos and put into English and French and other languages, so even like then it make your job harder, just to communicate when people are going through crisis. So brother, you have said it, and that is where our tragic situation lies, because we are divided. Africans are divided. Even within the African Union, we are not stepping up into. They have to understand that this is against the war in Sudan, is against the existence of the African people. And Sudan is very strategic. We are bordering 8 countries. How many countries have this kind of location? We are extended from the northeast Africa to the west and central Africa, the heart of Africa. Sudan is the heart of Africa. So imagine a human being, you took their heart out. What will happen to them? That is what is facing Africa right now. But Africans leaders are not treating the issue with the sense of urgency it requires. And that is why we have been advocating that the solution must be led by the African Union, supported by international government, because we don't relate to Saudi Arabia.
One follow-up quickly?
Sure.
And that is, and I hear you loud and clear, sister, with the language issue and the practical reality of that. The only thing I would retort slightly is, in the Berlin Conference, Europeans spoke many languages, but they still had a consciousness of pan-Europeanism and collective economic interest. So I think even though there are language differences, I think perhaps, again, going back to an Afrocentric center,
yes,
much like Europeans had Greece and other things, they saw as central. We need to have, especially in a place like Sudan, we need to have a clarity about African Nubian center. Of course, it is a Nubian Kush. It is, so those kinds of things need to deal with the minds of the people.
That's right.
The same way that these people come in with the Arab mindset and say these slaves don't deserve this. That's a mental thing they're coming with. That's like a I'm ready to die kind of mentality of identity. People need to have a firm identity of their Africanness. In the schools, there needs to be uniform in the basics, so that we come with that kind of identity, fire with fire. You understand what I'm saying?
That's right.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. And this has been a fight, and that is why people like us who speak up and try to promote this Afrocentric mindset were not welcome in our society. But to tell you the good news, this even fighting that is going on right now is fighting for existence for those Arab and Arab ideology, because there is more awareness. The South Sudan, they have fought, and until they were separated, they were also promoting this. The people of Darfur, the people from Nuba Mountain, the Blue Nile, Eastern Sudan, even far north, we are coming together. And we do this every day, speaking in all our platforms to our brothers and sisters Sudanese. And now they felt that Sudanese felt they can identify as African more. So that is the danger that is coming to the Middle East from not manipulating Sudan and other countries in our neighboring countries like Chad, Central African Republic. And so it is like we represent a danger for them. And that's why this fighting now, you have to understand it, is like fighting of existence. We are fighting to exist as African people, proud of who we are. And then there are some other people who are against that. And it's very understandable for us. But it is, that is why I think I see hope. It is going to be difficult, but it's not impossible. Change is definitely happening, but we need your help, all of you, to speak up and mobilize our African across the continent, but also our African American, Afro Caribbean, wherever they are. This is about our dignity. It is not just about fighting between two people who look alike or not. It is about the dignity of the African people.
Yeah. This is one of the most clear and concise descriptions of Darfur and Sudan that we have seen here today. And I have two questions. One is, there's a small segment in the video about Chinese intervention or economic interest in Darfur. China seems to be one of the other major players in all of Africa. Has there been, or do you perceive any conflict between the Arabs and the Chinese in Africa? And the second question is, can we get a copy of the video?
Well, thank you. I do think there is a conflict between, and because of that, the Chinese are militarizing both groups so that people are busy, and the Arabs are doing the same, so that the more Sudan is unstable, the more the resources are cheap. You have seen that one of the militia leader is selling our gold in the black market in the UAE with one of the prominent companies. And then the Chinese are also taking our resources, and they were exploring in oil before this war erupted. So there is like a conflict of interest that is going on, but they do it, the Chinese doing it very quiet. They don't confront you, but by the time you realize, they already have taken everything. So it is, and it all goes to consciousness. And about the video, yes, definitely we can share the video. This video was created for my previous organization, and it is allowed to use it for education and awareness raising. So I'll just like flag that to you. I will share, but it just have to be used the same and with a reference to like who created. So it should be fine.
Thank you for your presentation. I'm just a kitchen table grandma, and I want to know, what can I do? I hear us talking about this, and it feels like we need to do more to make people see that people are people, and they're being murdered, killed, maimed in horrible, horrible ways, and people are acting like it doesn't matter. But I'm in a church, I'm in a group, I'm in a neighborhood. What can we do? That's my one question. And the other one is, what do you want done to stop this violence and crime? And can you tell us something that we can actually do?
Well, thank you so much for asking that question and for also attending this presentation. I think there is a lot that can do, but we also present to people that they can do what they are able to do. So as of now, since all the internationals have left an international aid organization, it is the Sudanese women, youth, and the civil society group who step up providing emergency response. So you collect donations to help them continue to provide support until we can exercise more pressure over the international community to get the humanitarian aid in. We are also hoping to get an intervention that will protect civilians while we are getting the aid for them. So also speaking to your representative, members of Congress, senators, by pressing them that they must demand Biden's administration make Sudan a priority because they are leaders within the Security Council and their leadership matters. The U.S. should not walk behind Saudi Arabia. America is a very powerful country around the world, and we always claim that we have that seat. Then that leadership is missing now in Sudan because we have not yet mobilized as much. Also, if your people in your church will be open, you can bring us to your church also to educate more people and galvanize them to act. We will send whatever action opportunities that we have to Dr. Asante. He can circulate it around. We have a campaign right now, say Stand for Sudan, that will be circulating soon. We really, really want to do President Biden speak up, because media follow politics. And if our leaders don't speak, that means that conflict doesn't matter. And if we don't matter, that is a big problem here in the United States. And we have our voices. Our voice matter. We vote, and we have to make that vote count.
One more, I think. Really quick on that.
Yeah.
Are there any strategies specifically episodically focused on, one thing Saudi Arabia is big into is sports washing, meaning cleaning up, laundering their bad activities through buying off sports like golf, live golf, right? And so that matters to them in trying to burnish their image internationally. Is there any strategy around the upcoming Olympics? And is there any strategy specific to the upcoming election in America? These are two events that are high profile internationally, right? And have major impact on the world. So maybe focusing on these very heavy times coming up, is there a strategy that we can have around those two?
Absolutely. I think the strategy is, number one, the election in the United States. We want our people in every state where the debate being held will be present, having signs, sending questions to candidates, and we also want you to do so, what they are going to do about Sudan and what they want to see happen. And we tell them that there is Sudanese communities, there is Africans in their communities, African Americans who vote, and this issue is matter to them. What do they do if they got elected? So that by putting it. And then for the Olympic, also we take the advantage of that, because there will be a lot of, we'll mobilize around that. We work with several organizations who are also doing humanitarian advocacy. Usually we bring people together, and then also the diaspora community. Opportunities like that, something that we want to coordinate around. Unfortunately, right now, resources are the one that limiting us.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sister Niemat. Thank you so much. Excellent.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for
Thank
listening
you.
to us, and we're very, very pleased to have you.
Wonderful. That's powerful. And she will be coming back. We really look forward to her and to Brother Tugu. I just want to make one comment. You remember last week, I think it was the week before last, Sister Eldra Alexander had told us that she had gone to St. Catherine's up in Ontario. So she wants to distribute some flyers that she has on Harriet Tubman. So if you would do that, you want to come up here and do it, or you all right, just go ahead. All right, so she's going to distribute those flyers to different people. Thank you very much. I want to personally, I want to personally thank all of you for being here, and those of you who are on YouTube from around the 4 continents on the world. I mean, you have a powerful presentation today by Sister Niemat, Ahmadi, and Brother Tugu. They did an incredible job. And then those of you who don't know much about Sudan, you should now begin to get engaged and involved. And I hope, Sister Ahmadi, that there's some way that our community, the African American community, can become much more aware of this issue, whether that's through donating for whatever cause that is going on in Sudan, or helping the people in Sudan. But that's one way. But the other way is to politicize our congressional caucus. We now have African American people in all parts of the American government. And I guarantee you that 90% of them have a little understanding of what's going on in Sudan. That should not be. When they have the Congressional Black Caucus conventions and meetings normally in September, this is one of the issues that ought to be on the agenda. But unfortunately, a lot of times we're not thinking in a conscious way. This is not just the Congressional Black Caucus. The AU has the same problem. The African Union should be leading this issue. And there ought to be one or two people out there. Brother just can't keep his, go ahead, brother. What?
A true weapon would be to bring about Pan-Africanism.
Yes.
But the tool that Marcus Garvey suggested
Okay.
everybody should utilize.
All right.
It's a true weapon.
All right.
In the fight to better understand
Absolutely.
and combat this situation.
Absolutely. Brother is right. And I think that's what Brother Carl Amanor was talking about, an Afrocentric Pan-Africanism. If we had that as an ideological position throughout the African world, we would be making a lot of progress. And I want to thank you all. I want to thank everybody who supported this program today. Certainly Brother Kareem, who we could not do without, and Brother Carlton and Sister Nadav, who are on our board, and also our Associate Director, Dr. Jabali Ade, and all of the members who come and people who support us from time to time. We are so pleased to see you. And so we call upon our ancestors, mother of our mothers, the father of our fathers, to render mercy and to bear witness for the liberation and the victory of all oppressed people forever. It is done, I say. All right. So we'll see you again. We make the announcement. The announcement for the next presentation was made to you earlier, and we are looking forward to seeing you at Hudson.